Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday night live. We're going to give a couple minutes for everybody to get in, and we will get started doing the banding lathe technique tonight. So we'll just give a couple minutes. If you're watching this recording, you don't need to put in mystery box if you're watching the recording, because the mystery box is only during the live. But for those of you who are coming in, I see people coming into the live. If you're interested in the mystery box, I see it popping up already. The mystery box, we're going to have a little twist to that tonight, and I'll explain that in a couple minutes once we get everybody into the workshop tonight. So thanks for joining us. These are some of the things that we're going to be working on. This technique works great on ornaments. It works great on eggs, small shapes on this lathe. This is, I think, about a 4-inch ornament. Works really well. Large eggs, small eggs. Can do intricate designs. You can do kind of free-form designs. Lots of dot patterns. You can do banding. I'm going to show banding using the brush tonight as well. If you're into the mandala technique, that is also an option to be able to do. So lots of cool stuff that we're going to show you tonight. All right, so as people are coming in, the mystery box, I'm going to flip the camera up here for a second so I'm talking to you. The mystery box, if you're not familiar with that, what we do is we've got a box. It's normally a medium flat rate shipping box. Tonight it's actually a longer narrow box. So this is available only for people in the US 48 states. Sorry, Alaska and Hawaii. We can't ship those in a flat rate box. So we're just doing it for the US 48 states tonight. The way the mystery box works, if you're interested in it, type in mystery box in the comments. And for the first 10 minutes, my wife Janine is here. She's going to be marking your names on slips. And then toward the end of the live tonight, we're going to draw a name out of that clay pot that we're putting them in. And that person will have the opportunity to buy the mystery box for $50, and that includes shipping as well. The mystery box tonight, it's valued at over $100 worth of merchandise in there. I don't tell you exactly what's in there before we open it, once we draw somebody's name. But what I will give you a hint is it has everything to do with what we're doing tonight. So based on the shape of the box, some of you may figure out something that's in that box. If the person whose name is drawn, once we open the box, if they decide that they don't need it or want it, we'll just draw another name out of the pot and see if the next person wants it. So I see we had a nice group in here tonight. We're going to get started. So if you weren't in here for the first few minutes, this is what we're going to be doing. It's a banding technique and a design technique done on a banding lathe, and so it works great with ornaments. It works great with things like eggs. Round shapes, oval shapes do work best. If you're into the mandala designs, it's really easy to get your design. Simple things like snowflakes can do lots of cool dot patterns, nice even lines. And if you like to do banding using a brush, I'm going to show you guys tonight how to use dagger brushes to do banding colors and then doing your design work over the top. All right, so I'm going to move these out of the way here. I'm going to flip the camera down and show you what we're going to be working with tonight. So I'm setting this up a little bit differently tonight because we're going to be working with this lathe. And the lathe is expandable. You can tighten it, and I'll kind of show all of that. But I'm going to be putting it up on a box once I start decorating so that it'll bring it up really close and you guys can see how I'm doing this, and you'll also see how I kind of anchor my hand. Normally I would do it on the edge of the table, but I don't want you looking down at my feet half of the time, so I'm going to have this box up here, and that also helps raise it up closer to the camera. So I'll explain about the lathe. It's a plastic lathe. There is a little thumb screw underneath this part that you loosen, and that allows this section to slide back and forth. Sometimes if you tighten it like I tighten it, I usually have a needle nose pliers handy, so I can reach in here and I can just turn that little thumb screw a little bit and loosen that up, and that way I can slide this back and forth. So I can go to really long objects if I want. You are kind of restricted by the height of what will fit inside here. So you just slide this back and forth, and then one side of this has a spring. So this, you can pull it back, put your item in there, press this together, and this other side, this one does move freely on there. They both spin, and so to put something like an ornament inside, one thing to remember with ornaments, which end has which end is the top. Once you have it in there, you won't see this part, and so I always kind of make a practice of the end that does not have the spring is the one that I put the ornament top in, so I always remember. You might want to put a sticker on top of here that says, you know, top, so that you always remember to do that. Inside, there are foam washers. One has a larger hole, one has a little bit smaller hole. And so the one with the larger hole I usually have on that side because this ornament top will fit right inside that foam washer. You don't want to lose those washers. If you do, you can buy some washers that will fit in there, or you can just take craft foam and put those, you know, make your own washers in there if you needed to. One thing that is hard to see on here is on each side of this, there is a little bump. There's 4 little bumps on there, and you use that as a guide to be able to determine on your piece where to be able to section it off into quarters when you're doing your design. So to load this, I'm going to put the ornament in, I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to take this other end and I'm going to push it against there. Now as I push it against there, I want to give it a little bit of an extra push and get that spring kind of tightened up on there so that this ornament doesn't fall out of the inside. Once I've done that, I'm going to tighten that thumb screw, and then I want to kind of center the piece. Now on a banding wheel, your pieces spin. On the lathe, I usually just kind of hold my finger there, and I'm going to purposely move this so it's way off center. I'm going to I'll put my finger down here. You know what, I'm going to put it up on the box now so you guys can see this better. So I'll put my finger next to this, and as I turn it, you can see that the ornament's getting further away and it's getting closer, and that usually tells me that it's not centered. So I can take and I can just kind of shift this slightly and keep doing that and holding my finger there, and anywhere that it comes into contact with my finger, I know I need to push it away just a little bit more. And I want to try to get that centered in there the best that I can. Once I've got that centered, then I can decide what I want to do on this piece. And so I'm going to show you guys first banding using a brush, and then we'll do design work on top of that. And I'll show you some different techniques and different things, designs and things that you can do as well. You can do trees, you can do lots of different stuff. And we're going to work with products tonight. We're going to work with Mako's designer liner on some of these pieces, and we're going to work with stroke and coat on some of these pieces. If you've got other products out there like Concepts will work as well instead of stroke and coat. Fun Strokes will work. We're going to be working with Colors for Earth to do our banding with the brush. The reason I like to use those is they're really super concentrated color, and you can get really nice intense colors doing banding techniques. Duncan Easy Strokes would work as well if you've got Duncan Easy Strokes for that part. I've had people ask about using like a product like French Dimensions, and French Dimensions will work for this technique, but I find that French Dimensions, because they're glaze based, a lot of times you get more of a point coming up when you lift that tip, where the designer liner is clay based and you don't get those kind of points on the color itself. So I'm actually going to swap out here and do the bigger ornament that I've got in here. I took a Sharpie and put black marks on top of those little bumps so that you can see how we divide this into quarters. Now, some people will take a pencil and they'll draw a line across where each of those quarters is. I'm usually pretty good about being able to see where to go on the piece, but if you want, you can use a pencil. Be careful that the pencil isn't a real waxy lead, because sometimes that waxy lead will cause the glaze to repel. So a lot of people will just go with inexpensive water-based markers to do their lines on there, and those lines will burn away. If it's a wax pencil, and sometimes some inexpensive pencils, they put a lot of wax in there instead of the carbon or the lead that they have in pencils. Those can cause the glaze to repel either before or during the firing process. So I'm not going to use pencil or anything on here, but I'll show you how we're going to do the banding first. So this is a dagger brush. For those of you not familiar with the dagger brush, it kind of looks like an angular, but it's a very long brush. And I'm just going to get this wet, and you'll see how nice this brush comes to a nice point. The idea is it holds a lot of color, so when I do banding on here, I'm not constantly reloading the brush, that this will hold a lot of color. And there are 3 different sizes of the daggers. These come in a set. There's a 1/4 inch, 3/8 inch, and a 1/2 inch size. I'm going to work with the large one on here, and I always tell people with banding, practice first with water. And the reason I set this up so that it could be on a box is so I can show you. I'm going to anchor my hand on the edge. So normally this would be like the edge of the table that I would be anchoring my hand, and I'm going to use this hand to turn the lathe, and I can just touch that brush down once I start it turning, and I'm just using water right now, and you can see that I'm getting kind of a dark line where that water is on the piece. So practice first using water, doing some fine lines as you do the banding. You can kind of turn the brush on its side to get wider lines, or you can just continue to run that brush along and move it over ever so slightly to fill in areas with color. Now, I mentioned we're going to use colors for earth, colors on the background of this piece, and I'm going to grab the red. And so I've got the Candy Apple Red, the CC 112, and these colors, you want to make sure that you shake them really well, because they're kind of a gel base, and so they may appear to be really thick in the bottle before you shake them. The more you shake them, the more fluid they become. So make sure that you shake them really well. I'm going to squeeze a little bit of that color out into a palette here, and then I'm going to take and I'm going to load up with water, and I'm going to thin this down. And I'm going to thin this about half water, half color. If I use the color straight, there's a good chance that as I start doing my banding that I will kind of start skipping across on the piece. And a lot of times people think that they don't have enough color in the brush, and it's not that there isn't enough color. It's usually that the color is just a little bit thick on there. It looks like we're about at the time where we're done taking names for the mystery box. We're more than 10 minutes into the live.
Someone asked about how much the lathe is, and then another person posted the specials. Is it on? It's on.
Yeah, so all of the specials are on my website for all of the stuff that we're using tonight at learnfiredarts.com. I'll have Lisa already posted that in there. Thank you, Lisa. And so there's a section in there of the live event specials, and I've got the lathe by itself. I've got kits with stroke and coat. I've got kits with designer liner, and I've got kits with empty bottles, and I'll talk about that once we start doing the design work, the different things that are offered.
There's a couple questions. Well, someone commented you didn't put the top toward the spring. Did you?
No, the top goes to opposite the spring. I'm just in this one. Yeah, in this one, And so it doesn't matter which side you do it to. I just always do it to not the spring side. So you might want to, like I said, put a sticker or something, whichever side you decide to do it with. It doesn't matter because there will be points tonight where we're going to take the lathe and we're going to spin it around to be able to get at it from a different angle while we're working.
Okay, and then will a mug work on it?
A mug would be really difficult to do because a mug is open, and so the lathe, I don't think these are long enough to go like inside the mug, so you'd almost have to do something on that end of the mug to, cardboard or foam or something rigid that would hold it in place. But yeah, I think you could get a mug. The problem would be the handle on it. I mean, you could spin it back and forth, but there's not enough room to spin it all the way around on here. Small cylinder vases, eggs, ornaments, things like that work really well on here.
And then what about Speedball?
Yeah, Speedball does under underglazes as well, and those will work for doing this too. I haven't worked a lot with Speedball's products, so I'm not as familiar. I try to share products that I'm familiar with, but I do know that Speedball has an underglaze line. What you don't want to do the banding with is a product like Stroke and Coat and Concepts or Fun Strokes. Those will work, but because they're like a fritted product, they're kind of really chalky. And then when you go to do your design work on top of it with the Writer bottles, your tip tends to get plugged up because of that chalkiness of the glaze. So things like Easy Strokes and Color Concentrates are basically pigment in a binder. There's no frit in there, so they're not chalky. They're a nice smooth finish.
And do you use distilled water?
No, when I'm thinning the colors, I don't. I never put colors back in the bottle, and some people say, well, if I use distilled water, I can put it back in the bottle. But you don't know what bacteria is floating around in the air, so I don't put colors back in the bottle after I've mixed any type of water with it. Somebody could sneeze in the room, and bacteria could get in there, and if you put it back in the bottle, it'll break it down. So it doesn't matter if I use distilled water for thinning it, but that's a good question. All right, so when I'm ready to do my banding, I want to anchor my hand. I've got the brush loaded completely with color. I give it a little bit of a shake as I take it out of my color here to make sure that I don't have so much color in there that it's going to drip out. I'm going to start this turning, and then I'm going to touch the tip of the brush down to get my line. And I've got just one fine line going all the way around on here. So I can do fine lines like that. If I want them to be wider, I'll usually go and do another line the distance away for how wide I want it to be. And then I'll either turn the brush a little bit on its side to fill in that area, or just slowly bring the brush across to get that area filled in with color. Now, if it's too translucent, if this red is too translucent, I could add a little bit more color to this, maybe not thin it quite as much. But again, if the color isn't thinned, you won't get nice lines. The brush will just kind of skip across on there. So you do need to thin those, and make sure that as you reload the brush, you kind of stir that color up, because when you dilute it, it does tend to want to settle out if it sits for a little bit. Now, I could go and try to do a line on this other side without spinning the lathe around, but it's kind of awkward, and you can't see that here. But for me to bring my hand over here and get in at this angle, it's kind of awkward. So I'm just going to pick the lathe up and spin it around, and I find that it's a lot easier to work on this side then, because I'm going into the piece where it's rounded, and I can do a line on this side. Again, I'll do 2 lines, and then I'll fill in between. And a lot of you are probably like, oh my gosh, you make that look so easy. And people always say that when I do banding on a banding wheel too. And it really
suggested just sending you their pieces
to band. And that's what a lot of times people do in workshops. At the end, I'll be sitting there banding the edges of everybody's plates and things. And it's something that does take practice. I find that this is easier than a banding wheel, because you're kind of turning this slowly as you do this. But just anchor your hand. Don't try to have your hand out here free. If you don't anchor the bottom of your hand, you're not going to get an even line. And just look where the brush is touching. Now this side, the first side that I did, I can see kind of a little bit of streakiness in there, so it's dry. I'm just going to go back over this and add a little bit more color on top to even that out and get a little bit more intense color on there. I'm going to leave the middle open because we'll do some designs in there. If I wanted to add some other colors in here, since this is a Christmas ornament, I'm going to add a little bit of green. And I'll show you the smaller dagger brushes will give you even finer lines. So I'm going to thin this green a little bit. Just adding some water to this. Loading the brush. And I'll add a real fine green line below and on each side of the red. And look at how many lines I can do before I have to reload this brush. I'm going to spin it around. Do my green here. And do my green here. And I still have color in that brush that I could keep doing more, and that's a cool thing about daggers. And I do sell the daggers on the website. You know what? I forgot to put these in the live event specials. I'll have to do that after the live tonight, add those to it. But they're sold in a set of 3 of those brushes. And I think we sell them, they might be individual on the website as well. So I've got basically my background, my banded lines on here. Now I can decide what I want to do for my design, and we're going to work on this piece using Mako's designer liner. One of the reasons or several reasons that I like designer liner for this technique is they come in a squeeze bottle with this metal tip, so I can do very fine lines and dots and designs. These are clay based, so these by themselves when they're fired would fire out dull. They're basically an underglaze. They're slip with pigment in them. A lot of people make a mistake with designer liner is they think they're a dimensional product, and they will leave a little bit of dimension, but they're not designed that the thicker you put them on, the more dimensional they'll be. A lot of times they'll actually pop off of the piece if you try to do them too thick. So they're really for fine lines, dots, designs. I'll show you several different techniques tonight and explain what I did on some of those pieces. The metal tip, there's a pin that goes inside there. You can see the plastic bag on here. So when these are new, this little white cap that's in the bag is on top of this bottle. And you need to, on a brand new one, you need to take this metal tip and use the pointed end and poke it into the top of that plastic bottle. And once you poke that in, give it an extra shove to open up that tip. If you don't do that, nothing will come out of the bottle because the tops of these are sealed when they're brand new. But if you don't give it that extra push, if you only put that little metal part into the top and you don't push it so that it opens that plastic up wider, you're going to find that you have to squeeze a lot harder to get that color to come out of the bottle. So open that up nice and wide. The tip is going to control how much color comes out. Now I always have a tile sitting off to the side. With designer liner, you want to make sure that you kind of you turn it upside down and you kind of shake it a little bit and give it a squeeze. Now before the live tonight, I shook all of these really well with the pin inside so that the colors are mixed well. So you want to make sure the colors are mixed well. The nice thing about this versus a product like French Dimensions, a lot of times you have to reach inside with like a skewer to stir that product up. These usually shake up really well, and I've had some of these bottles for over a year and they've stayed fluid, and they mix really well. So I always give it a shake, squeeze out a little bit to make sure that all the air is out of the bottle. If you don't do that, sometimes you'll get a pfft, and it'll kind of spray out on the piece, and you don't want that. Anytime you turn it back over or turn it upright, you want to make sure you turn it back, give it a shake, give it a squeeze to get that air out. So I've kind of got that sitting off to the side here, so you'll see me kind of reaching over with new colors. The plastic bag, the pin is poked through the plastic bag, and the reason we do that, and I keep that little white cap in there, is so that I don't lose this pin. If you do lose the pins in here, you can get pins. I go to Joann's and buy a box of pins for a few dollars, and I always have extras because even if we do the plastic bags, sometimes they get misplaced. All right, so on this particular piece, we're going to do the wreaths like I did on this ornament. And so this is all done with designer liner, and I suggest that you maybe practice on paper with this technique before you actually do it on the piece. But this is where your marks on your lathe is how you center your pieces. So I know that I can look at this and I'm like, okay, this is the area where I want to do my wreath. So to do this, I'm just going to squeeze the color out and kind of work my way around.
Just a heads up, if anyone's still commenting mystery box, we finished with that a while
ago. Yeah, mystery box is done, and we do have a little twist to it tonight. So each of those quarters where it's where I've got it marked, I'm going to do another wreath. Instead of going from this first one to the second one to the third one to the fourth one, I'm actually going to spin this around to the other side and do the one directly across from it. And the reason I do that is once I have this one centered, then it's easy to turn it on its side and kind of space out how wide I need the wreath in there, so I have kind of even spacing between all of them. So I'm going to do my wreath on this side. And this is where you don't want to, because you can hear I'm kind of scraping this tip on the ornament. If I was doing this over a product like Stroke and Coat or Concepts, this tip would be plugging up with chalky color. This doesn't have any color on the background, but if I had done color on here using like Easy Strokes or the color concentrates, I wouldn't have that problem of the tip filling up on there. All right, so now I've got them across from each other, so now I know I've got this much space here, so I'm going to do my wreath in between. And sometimes I will go back and I will add to the wreath, so I'll look at this and be like, okay, you know, I can go a little bit wider on this one, so I'll add a little bit more to kind of even these out. And it's really just kind of a squiggling motion to make my wreath. If you drag this through color that has dried, your tip can plug up with the designer liner. If that happens, and it didn't happen, but all I have to do is take the pin, poke it back into the top of that to clean that out. Remember, turn it over, give it a shake, give it a squeeze, and I can add my wreath. When you get a classroom full of people doing this, it's not quite as bad as somebody rubbing their fingernails across a chalkboard, but it can be rather loud with that. So I've got my wreaths. I make this one a little bit bigger, add a few more squiggles, go out a little bit further in a couple spots here. All right. Anytime I'm not using the designer liner, I want to put that pin back in the top. And I find that I usually put my finger against that tip, and then I can easily glide that pin into the top. And I say easily, and I've got so many lights glaring in my face here that the reflection on here is, but if I have my finger there, I can usually easily slide that in rather than trying to just poke it into that tip. I use my finger to help guide.
He doesn't admit he needs reading glasses yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of getting to that point where I might need them sometime soon. Now, one of the things that I really like about designer liner is I can do designer liner on top of designer liner while it's wet, and it doesn't bleed out. Sometimes other colors will tend to bleed out, and I don't really like that. So I'm going to show you while this wreath is still wet. And now again, I want to keep track of where is the top of my ornament. I do it on the side that does not have the spring. So I want my bowl on my wreath I want them to be on the bottom. Some of you might want it to be on the top. Things like, I'm going to show you guys how to do Christmas trees, and I've had a couple people in workshops where their Christmas tree is upside down because they forget which is the top and which is the bottom. So I can go right over the top of this, and I can squeeze out my bowl, do some little ribbons coming down. If I want to add some berries, I can just go and add some little berries, and I'll hold this up in a minute and you'll see how the green is wet, the red is wet, and these colors are not bleeding out. You can see the shine of the wetness of that, and the colors aren't bleeding. So I can go and I can add. Now if I get a little area that skips, I just go back and fill that in. And I can add lots of different colors for even lights on this wreath. So I'm going to go back. I'm not going to do the berries on all of them. I think you guys get the general idea with that. But I can take other colors. So we'll take a little yellow. Go back to that one that I did the berries on. We can add some yellow dots on here. And put as many colors as we want. Always remembering to put the pin back into the top of the bottle. Can't tell you how many times in workshops I have people that don't do that, and then later I find the bottles and I have to just poke the pin into the tip. If you really get a tip that's plugged with dried color, that tip easily screws off of the top, and you can take those tips and just put them in a bowl of water, let them soak, and wash them out. All right, I'll hold this up so you can see all the different colors of little lights on that wreath. Now I can also go back and I can decide if I want to do some dot designs. And so the dot designs can go on top of the colors that I banded on. So on top of the red, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do some dots on top here. So again, I want to anchor my hand, but I also want this bottle to be upside down. I don't want to go on the side like this because there's a good chance I'm going to get air. So I'm kind of working down on here, and I can just go and just slowly turn this and tap this down to add dots right in the middle of that red banded line. And I really start to watch as I get to this last section here to make sure that I kind of get them spaced evenly so I don't have a real big space between. But otherwise, as I go along, I just kind of just touch it down. You can see how quickly. When I want to do dots on the other side, again, it's awkward to hold my hand that way. I'm going to spin this around, and I'm going to add my dots going around this way.
How many layers can you safely add to the image before it risks popping off?
I would say 2 to 3. So, and I'll show you on the mandala one that I did dots on top of dots. And if you go more than 3 layers of this, I think that's probably the point where you're going to run the risk of the color wanting to pop off, because you're basically putting 3 coats in some areas. So 2 is probably safest. You can probably get away with 3. Now in between on this ornament, I wanted to fill in something in between, and I did just kind of a dot design. So I'll show you that real quickly. I'm going to use the blue, the light blue. And what I do is I start with a dot in the center of the area, and then I kind of work out each side.
Where do you get those Bisque ornaments?
I've actually got them in the kits. Otherwise, this happens to be a Mako Bisque, and we will be adding these to our website, but a lot of ceramic studios also pour these ornaments. So you can get them at most ceramic studios will have round ornaments, and a lot of them will have more ornate shapes and things too, not just the round ornaments. So once I've done kind of my cross, then I'll go and I will add dots in between there going out and do one in between each of those. If I want to add some other colors, we'll add a little bit of red in here like I did on the other one. I can then go and tap in red dots in between each of those sections.
Can you use the colors on porcelain bisque?
Yeah, these colors, that's a good question. So designer liner can be fired, can be high fired. On the bottles, it will say if the colors change at those higher temperatures. Sometimes it'll say like the color lightens, the color darkens, it deepens. And it should say it, and I should probably have my reading glasses. To cone 6, this one doesn't say. Yeah, this one, the color must not change. Usually Mako has on the label, it'll say like firing it to a higher temperature. It talks about going to cone 6, but it doesn't say anything about those colors changing on there. All right, so that's kind of the basics of doing how I did that Christmas ornament. I could go back and finish this, but I think you guys get the general idea on here. I'll just kind of share some of the other things that I did on this ornament that's finished. So the wreaths I did with all of the different colors. I did the little bursts in between each of them. And then I kind of wanted icicles coming down from the top. So to do the icicles, all I did is I took the, let me grab the slip of paper here. So when I did that, again, I get the air out of the bottle, but then I just start out and I kind of wiggle the brush or this back and forth and then bring it down to a point to create my icicle. And then it was, basically like a circle that was on there. And I kind of did several. And then I went back and I filled in some smaller ones kind of in the middle to get that look. And the designer liner, I don't know if I turn it to the side here, yeah, you can't really see that. It looks really dimensional when you first put it on. Once the moisture dries out of it, the color flattens quite a bit. So don't be alarmed and think, oh my gosh, I'm doing it wrong and I'm putting too much color on there. It will look dimensional, but it will flatten once you get going on there. I'm going to show you guys a few other things on here that you can play around with. So if you want to do something like a tree, you can do kind of a modern design, just going kind of back and forth and getting wider. And then I'm just going to use green to do the trunk of the tree. So that's a really easy tree design. And then you can go and you can put lights on that tree, kind of like we did on the wreath. And again, with the designer liner, it's kind of nice because you can do wet colors on top. I can do a little star on the top of this tree.
Easy.
And I can add little dots for lights. I'll add a couple other colors here and I'll hold that up to the camera so you guys can see that as well. And a great way to practice this is on paper. So don't just go right onto your ceramic piece and think that you're going to easily do this. Some people might be able to do that, but others probably practicing on paper is a really good idea. And we'll add a little orange in here and then I'll hold this up. We got our little Christmas tree. All right. All right. This other ornament I'm going to do using Stroke and Coat. So Stroke and Coat comes in several different size bottles, and it comes in, most common, most people buy it in the 2-ounce bottle. I generally buy it in pints because when I'm working in workshops, I want the larger bottle because we usually pass it around, or during COVID, the couple workshops that we did have, I went around and squeezed it out for everybody. I wouldn't dare let anybody touch the bottles unless if they disinfected in between each one. So most people will have the 2-ounce bottles. There's something really easy that you can do with this. We sell, and Mako sells these. They have these decorating tips that you just basically take off that flip top that's on there, screw this onto the top, and then they also sell the metal tips, and these metal tips screw onto the top, and you turn it into this bottle, and then you take the red cap off and put the metal tip in. So I've done that here with the teal. I've got the metal tip, so you can actually use this as your writer bottle for doing the designs, using it right out of the 2-ounce bottle. Now, if you're like me and you have the big bottles, these plastic caps will fit onto the tops of these bottles. But holding a bottle this big and trying to squeeze out little intricate designs would be a bit challenging. So we also have the same bottles. Mako sells the bottles that Designer Liner comes in. They sell them as empty bottles, and inside that rattling that you hear and the dark things that you see in there, that's the metal writer tip that screws onto the top, and there's a pin in there also. So these are sold in sets of 3 that you can take and squeeze from your pint bottles, or they also are sold in 8-ounce bottles. You can squeeze it into these bottles. I just marked with a Sharpie what color is in here. I've got my metal tip on there, and this is all ready to go. So you don't need to buy Designer Liner. If you have a product like Stroke and Coat or Concepts or Fun Strokes, you can use those colors and just get the empty bottles and fill those. So I've loaded some bottles here. I forgot to mark which one that is. I know that is Sunkissed that's in there. I've got Fruit of the Vine, Caribbean Blue, and Sunkissed already loaded into those bottles. But I'll also use a little bit of the teal next time and use that right out of the 2-ounce bottle.
Can you make a whimsical cactus with lights?
Are we talking about making it with clay or doing a design on here? A design, you could do a whimsical cactus, and you can use, this to actually outline the design of a cactus, or you can do kind of like I did with a Christmas tree, where I just did the squiggle back and forth, and you could do, grab my paper back here. Here, I'll use the teal. So if I wanted to do kind of a whimsical cactus, I would make the main part of the body of the cactus, and I could do kind of some of the, I call them arms on the cactus.
On the clay, she said, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Design on the clay.
And I can do some little grasses and stuff coming up at the base of this. And I could actually go and I could put some eyes on there if I wanted to make it kind of silly and fun. But yeah, you can definitely you'll find lots of designs you can play around with, and you'll look at some simple things and you may come up with, you'll look at a design on something and you may come up with something, you'd be like, I could do that just with squiggly lines or outlines or dot designs and things too. Things like the flowers, the snowflakes, and I'll kind of show you guys on here how to do those things as well. So I'm going to work with the Stroke and Coat, and I've got the Caribbean Blue, the Fruit of the Vine, and Sun-Kissed here. And I want to show you guys kind of doing a banding method instead of using brushes. You can also just use it right out of the writer bottle. So on this egg, these lines that are on here, the yellow, the blue, and the purple, the colors that I'm going to be working with, those are all done squeezing the color right from the bottle. I didn't use a brush. So some people are a little intimidated by a brush when they are doing banding techniques. And so they may find that using the writer bottle is a little bit easier. So let me set that egg down. So if I want to do straight lines, and I'm going to use the blue here just because that's going to show up the best. So if I want to do straight lines, again, I'm going to anchor my hand. I'm going to give this a squeeze, get the air out, and kind of work upward on here. And as I start turning this, I just touch that tip down, but it's at an angle, so the color flows out, and I'm turning away from the tip. And I can just take and squeeze that and run this around and get a line with the blue. If I want it wider, I just kind of drag this out and fill in that space on there. And I've got a blue line. If I want to do a blue line on the other side, again, I'm going to pivot this around. And when you first start doing this, I'm going to hold this up. Look at how kind of uneven that line is. So as you're squeezing, sometimes you have a little bit more pressure, a little less pressure, and so you'll get areas that look a little thicker. But then once you have a nice line on there, just stop squeezing and just drag the tip through to kind of drag that color and even out your edges. If you continue to squeeze color out, you're just going to get more and more color on there, and you won't necessarily get a smooth edge on there. So now I stopped squeezing color, and I'm just dragging to get that line. Again, I'm going to make sure that I put the pin in the top of these when I'm done with them. Oh, the mystery box should include my finished projects. Yeah, a lot of times you'd be amazed how long these projects sit, because I do about half of it during the live, and sometimes it sits for weeks and months before I actually get around to finishing it. I just finished the other day the owls that I did, gosh, that was back, could have been last year or the beginning of this year, and I finally got those glazed the other day. I'm going to add a purple band here.
Did you see the last question?
No.
Maybe I misheard you, but did you say that the designer liners flatten out? My experience is that they fire bumpy.
They flatten. What I was saying before, Luann, was that when you first put them on, they look really dimensional and they look really thick, but as they dry, they flatten, so they're not as dimensional. But yes, when you feel the pieces, there is still some dimension to it, because you're putting drops or lines of slip on top of there, so you will feel the texture. But I was just saying that some people might be like, oh my gosh, I got it on way too thick, because I can see that it's dimensional, and not to freak out when you see some dimension when you first put it on. It's when people try to put it on really super thick because they're trying to get really thick dimension. And when I do the flowers, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about with that, because that is usually a problem when people try to do really thick flower petals and things using the designer liner. So on this one, I'm going to do some flowers. It probably would be better on an egg than on an ornament, but I just grabbed a couple ornaments to work on tonight. So I didn't mark with the Sharpie where my lines or my markings are on here. I can see the dimensional marking. You probably can't, but I'm going to go around and I'm going to do a dot of yellow for the center of each of my flowers where that marking is. And now working with a product like Stroke and Coat, you can put more color on to get thicker or bigger spaces, but you have to be careful because that color tends to flow a little bit more, where the designer liner doesn't tend to want to flow or move. So if I did really big centers on here, as I turn that, that could drip. So just kind of keep that in mind when you determine how thick you're going to make your areas on here. Now if I want to add some flowers, I'm going to go back to my purple, and I can do basically comma strokes. So what I'm going to do is I've got my yellow center here. I'm going to go out a little ways from that. I'm going to give it a squeeze, get a puddle of color, and then kind of drag that in like a comma. And I'm going to do that because to do it from the other side, I probably could do it, but most people feel more comfortable pulling toward themselves than they do squeezing and pushing away. So I'm going to do one petal on each of these flowers, and then I'm going to spin this around and go from the other direction to get the petals coming from the other way. And then as I work to do the other ones going in the other direction, I can go give a little squeeze and a pull. I'm going to turn this way to get the petals coming in this way. Always trying to pull toward myself rather than pushing away to get the flowers. The other thing you want to be careful of when you're working with a product like Stroke and Coat, if the purple were to touch the yellow center, there's a good chance that because both colors are wet, that they'll kind of bleed into one another. So be careful not to get designs too close to one another as you're doing this. If you do need to have your marks touch, make sure that they dry before you do the next color so that they don't bleed into one another. Now if I want to add some vines and some leaves, I'm going to use my teal to do this. I'm going to squeeze out a line, can make a little curly Q loop, and just have these kind of coming out of different areas, kind of connecting. I'm not actually touching the teal to the purple. I'm just kind of working it up to that design. So now I've got my vines. Then I can go back and I can fill in some leaves. And again, I always want to kind of be pulling away from the piece. So for leaves, again, it's just a squiggly, pulling this back and forth, and then kind of bringing it out to a tip to get your leaves wherever you want to add some leaves. And this will work with products like Stroke and Coat. It will work with designer liner as well. No two leaves will be exactly the same. Some will be bigger, some will be smaller. And I'm just always turning the lathe and anchoring my hand as I add the leaves. And if I want to add some little leaves on the vines, I can do that as well. I think you get the general idea there of what we're doing. And then I can go back and I can do dots of color on top, but now I had mentioned earlier a product like Stroke and Coat is kind of chalky, so as I touch this metal tip down, I want to try not to dig into that color that's on there, so I want to just kind of squeeze it and do little dots without pressing down into the blue, and I'll hold this up so you guys can see.
Did anyone ever tell you you're slightly talented? No, don't give them a big head. Can you...
No, they don't tell me I'm slightly talented. They tell me I'm super talented.
Can you use designer liner and stroke and coat together on the same piece?
That's a good question. Designer liner and stroke and coat on the same piece? You can. Stroke and coat doesn't move and flow in firing, so if you put designer liner on top of it, designer liner fires out dull, stroke and coat fires out shiny. You're going to end up clear glazing these anyway or putting some type of a glaze over the top, so it's really fine to do that. Yes.
And, okay. Can you show us the stilt you use when you fire these?
I don't have a stilt here in front of me. If you're familiar with, so egg stilts, there's different ones in the market. You know what, I think the little kiln out there, I think the stilts are still in there that I fired these pieces on, if you want to go grab a couple of those.
There's a couple other questions after that if you want to talk about those while I go get them.
Okay. So Janine's going to go grab the Bisque ornaments I will be putting up on the site. I don't have them up there right now, but I will have those up on the site probably tomorrow. Janine's going to grab a stilt, and I'll show how those are.
And then the lathe being vertically adjustable?
The lathe is not vertically adjustable. This pretty much is the height that it is. So, yeah, those are the stilts. Now I'm going to have to pay Janine more because she had to go and grab these. So stilts for firing things like ornaments, there's different ones out there. This one happens to have like a metal, some type of a metal that can go in the kiln stilt. And so these get placed. So if it's an egg, it goes with this on the inside so that the egg isn't touching this area. Sometimes pieces will be big enough that they'll actually sit on those stilts as well, but usually I look for one. These come in different heights. I'll have one that this egg sits on top of, and then it's, you have to be careful because if the egg is not put on there centered, it's going to want to spin, so you want to try to get it so that metal rod kind of comes in the middle so your egg doesn't spin around in firing. The same is true of the ornaments, and these are both wet, so I don't want to pull those off, but I'll take the top off of this ornament. So these just go right on top like that of the stilt. Now there are ones out on the market that are cast with slip. It's a ceramic mold where the whole thing is ceramic, and then you just need to be careful that there's no glaze on the inside, that when you put it over that ceramic part that it won't fuse to it. The inside of this is bisque. Usually the very top of this, when I'm glazing these, I usually put them on a stilt, and then I kind of hold them there, and I put the glaze on this way. So I usually, where that cap goes over, there usually isn't any glaze on there. But these are stilts that they sell for like eggs and ornaments and things. And then I've got some that are like a big platform, like 3 sections, and there's holes in it that the metal rods slide down into those holes, and it's kind of adjustable with different heights of rods and things depending on what you're firing. The caps come with the ornaments, and they're a nice strong cap that work really well in there. I didn't see if there were other questions while I got everything. Okay, all right. So that's the basics of doing flowers. Again, you can do dots and things on top of there. I'm going to show you guys a few other things here.
Oh, someone said that you have to sell the tops. They come with them.
They come with the ornaments, yeah. And I actually do have a bag of a whole bunch of the tops as well, that if somebody needs tops, I have them, because sometimes the tops get lost, or they get stepped on, things like that.
And I don't know, someone asked about the adjusting, but what size piece does the lathe support?
So this ornament is a 4-inch ornament, and that takes you almost right to the bottom of it. So a 4-inch wide piece fits in here. Lengthwise, you've got probably 8 to 9 inches this way that you could go. So something like a vase, you could put in there. If you have longer, like I said, some people have those real ornate ornaments. The longer ones, this will slide down pretty far. This is still wet, so I don't want to pull it out to show you how far that will expand on there. All right, so some of the other things, I was just holding this egg up here. So these lines in the middle here, this was done on the lathe as it turned, and this was all done with stroke and coat. And instead of holding it in a straight line, I just kind of went like this as that piece spun, and I did some yellow, I did some purple, and I did some blue just to get kind of wavy lines. I was actually thinking of doing eggs with just straight lines that just keep going and going and going on there, and doing like 2 or 3 colors. I think that would be really neat on there. You can do that same comma stroke. You can do, and this isn't probably the best example. I'm looking here to see if I have another one that has that. I didn't do that on any of these. I've done it on pieces in the past, but you can do, I'm going to grab my tile here and I'll show you on the tile. So you can do like a straight stroke where it's squeeze it, get a tail, do a dot, squeeze to a tail, and do continuous patterns like this, where it's kind of a straight comma stroke, dot, comma stroke coming the other way, doing, you know, all the way around on the piece. You can also take and do just this pattern of just 4 of those strokes to create a pattern. You can add, you know, other dots around here to create. So you can really kind of play around with different patterns using some basic dot and stroke type of designs. When I do things like the snowflake, I'm going to grab my paper and show you on there kind of how the snowflake is done. So that starts out with a dot in the middle, and then I usually do lines going out from that dot. And then I'll decide to do kind of some little cross lines on each one. I might do some dots on those as well. And then I might go back and do some dot patterns coming out in between each of those sections.
Someone suggested a styrofoam ball inside a vase or a glass open and close.
Oh, that's a really good idea. A styrofoam ball inside there. That would be a really good idea to do that. And I can go back with other colors and add, you know, more dots coming out. To get your snowflake designs. I also did on this egg, I did just this yellow is just a squiggly line, so that was just as it spun, I just slowly did little squiggles to add some in there. On this one I didn't do the flowers centered, I kind of staggered them, so I went along and I did my yellow dots for the centers, and then I did my blue petals coming in, and then filled in with leaves where it was needed in that design. There's white designer liner too. You can do white dots on top of colors. Question?
Do you keep, toss, or clean the tile?
I clean the tile. That's a glaze. Yeah, that's a glaze tile, and I've had some of those tiles for 20 years that I've reused many, many times. A sponge will take off that color. The colors, Stroke and Coat, Concepts, Designer Liner, all of those colors wash away when they get wet before they're fired.
Can you make the strokes tree on a bigger piece of paper? I can't see them. They're too small.
This is the tree. So it's really, you're just starting at the top of the tree and you're going down. I'll just do it bigger on this piece here. So if I start at the top of the tree, I just kind of get wider and wider. And then the base of the tree, I just do kind of small and then get wide again. And again, practice on paper, because you'll find that at first you're going to be a little more cautious, a little slower doing it. I've done a lot of those, so I don't really even think about it when I go to do that. I was just going to mention on, what do I do with it now, the Snowflake Ornament. Oh, I set it over here. So on the Snowflake Ornament, on this one, this was done with designer liner, and you can see on the base here how close I got the light blue dots with the dark blue dots. And that again is one of the advantages of designer liner, is that I can put them wet next to each other like that and they don't bleed out. If I did that with Stroke and Coat or Concepts and I didn't let like the light blue ones dry and then do the dark blue, there's a good chance that those colors would bleed together. I just have to give it a second here for the camera to focus when I'm getting this close to the design. So I did those dots along the top of the ornament and along the bottom of the ornament. When you do something like a mandala design, again, those markings that are on the lathe help you to position the center. So you see a center here, and there's 4 of them on this ornament, and then all of my dots work out from that center. So I did, on this one I did the blue going out, so I made basically a cross or an X on there. Then my green, there were 4 of those in the middle of each of those. Then there's orange in the middle of each of those. There's yellow in between some of those, and you just kind of build out from that design. But you can see on the center here, it was the blue, and then I did a dot of green, and on top of that, I also did a dot of orange. So somebody asked earlier, like, how many layers of designer liner can you do? So I did a bigger circle of the blue, smaller circle of the green on top of that, and a dot of the orange on top of that. I probably wouldn't go much thicker than that because I'd run into colors wanting to pop off.
On the egg, do you use a brush to put the background color of a section?
Yeah, so on this one, I did the banding with a brush that I showed right at the beginning of the live. If you weren't here to see that, you can watch the recording, and I show how I did the orange, the yellow, the purple on the egg, brushing on using the color concentrates or easy strokes to do that. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
All right. If we did miss any questions, you can private message me. I usually try to go through the comments on here and see if we missed anything. But honestly, sometimes that takes hours. Sometimes there's hundreds of comments and there's little side conversations and stuff. So sometimes I even miss things when I'm trying to go through it. So if we did miss anything, feel free to just message me and I will try to answer. All right, I want to, before we open up the mystery box, we do these lives for free. Normally I would charge for webinars, and so I usually try to show you guys some new products and things, and we hope to sell some stuff as a result. So we don't have these up on our website. These will be going up soon. For those of you that do Raku, a lot of you love my Raku glazes. We've got Colors for Earth Raku glaze kits that will be going up on the site soon. We also have Colors for Earth has dry crystals. So if you're familiar with crystal glazes, you can get just these dry crystals and you can make your own. And so this one happens to be one of the crystal colors. It is this one here, the brown crystal. And so you basically can put a glaze on a piece, sprinkle these crystals on while it's wet, and then when it's fired, you get your own combination of crystal glazes. So these are all the colors of the crystals. These are up on the website now. It's a Colors for Earth product, and we've got a kit that has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 colors in the kit of these crystals, and those are on sale. Those are under the live event special. The Raku glazes will be going up soon. We've got those in stock. And then the Colors for Earth that I used tonight, the color concentrates, those come in 2 ounce and 1 ounce. We have kits in 1 ounce sizes and 2 ounce sizes on the website. We've got a couple colors are up there in individual. We will be getting those up individually as well. But the kits are on sale. Gives you a really good variety of colors. And then I'm kind of excited about these. I haven't had a chance to play around with them yet. These are letter stamps. And these are really cool because they're a rubber stamp of the letters. There's capital and lowercase. And they're on this plastic thing, and they lock together. So whatever word you want to create, what?
Thing is a technical term.
Yeah, thing. They've got this thing. So there's these little bumps on here that lock into each other. So when you create a word that you want to stamp into clay or stamp color onto a piece, they'll lock together, and you're not sitting there trying to line up those letters and get them all straight. They lock together. You can stamp your word on there, or your name, or whatever message, and then they pop back apart, and they wash up really easy. So I'm looking forward to playing with these in clay. We just got these in. The numbers were back ordered, so we're holding off on putting those up on the website until we have everything.
Going back to the crystals, are those mid-range fire?
Those, I believe, this is... That's a good question. I'm pretty sure that these can go to higher temperatures. I'm just looking on the bottle to see if Paula has on here. Apply crystals by placing them in the desired location on a piece, blah, blah, blah. Seeing if she has anything in here about temperature. These say to glaze fire to cone 06. I know that you can put these on pieces that are going to be, if you've got a mid-range glaze and you put these crystals into them, it will flow and it will, add color. But some of the colors may change because these are made with all of her other colors can also go to like a mid-range temperature, but they may change a little bit. Usually the reds and oranges and stuff, they'll actually hold up really well at those high temperatures. But I'll check more into that and update the website and put on there what firing range is recommended.
Do you still sell your Raku colors like duck feathers and kaleidoscope, etc.?
Yep, all of my colors are on there too. Yep, we still sell those.
Look on the website, Luann. Just kidding.
So I have something really exciting, and some of you are going to really get excited when you see this next thing. And because people have been waiting for it and asking for it and hoping somebody would come out with it again. Some of you are going to be like, what the hell is that? This is the texture tool is back. This is designed, Clay Magic has a lot of bears and things that have this bumpy texture on them. This is designed when you're cleaning those pieces and you want to add that texture, you roll this over the area where you've scraped the seam off, and this will add that texture back in. These have been gone for a long time. We just got all the prototypes in. I played around with them. They work awesome. awesomely. They're awesome. To add the texture, these will be available in July. We're having them aired in. I've got them on the website already under the live event specials. They are on sale. You can order them now, and you will be on the list then to get them in July when they come in. Yeah. And they're coming by air. If we had them shipped in by boat, we might not get them until fall. Right now there's a lot of issues in the ports and just getting stuff sent out because there's a shortage of containers. But these are available. I've got them on the website, but probably sometime in July they will be coming in. I just gave the final approval on all the prototypes today. They started manufacturing them today, and they will be airing several thousand of them in once they're ready, and then we'll continue to have these available. And I've got them individually. I've got them in 12 packs, 24 packs, or a case pack of 144. So the more you buy, the cheaper they get. But individually, they're on sale for $9.99, and then the price goes down the more you buy from there. So that, I know a lot of people out there are going to be really excited, and you guys are the first to see it. Tomorrow I'll be posting other stuff out there as well. All right.
Okay. Would you use a sponge roller to apply color to those letters?
Yeah, the sponge roller would work well for that. Yeah, definitely.
And then are the bisque ornaments low fire or mid-range fire?
Good question. The bisque ornaments, those are a low fire item. I don't know of anybody who makes them and sells them in large quantities that is a mid-fire ornament. And I'm just thinking too, like, normally you don't stilt mid-fire pieces, and I'm just thinking, like, how would you set this to fire it? Because if you stilted it, there's a good chance that that metal rod would come through, or the metal rod would soften and actually bend in firing. So that's a really good question. I never really thought about those in a mid-range temperature. What you would almost have to do is you would have to fire them to like a cone 5, cone 6, and do your decorating on top of it, and then low fire the glazes on there is probably the best way to do that with the ornaments, because they would be really hard to stilt with glaze on them. Yeah, that's the only way I can think of really to do them offhand. All right. Any other questions, or we will go to the mystery box, and I will explain what we're doing tonight with the mystery box. Oh, are those single use? I see.
Wait,
Catherine.
no.
Oh.
Someone said in. Oh, that was something different. In reference to.
I see. Last class. If gnome pots, can you use EXs? I think Kathy's saying easies.
Stroke.
Yeah, easy stroke is probably what. Yeah, I see that down. Yeah, I mean easy stroke. So for the pots, yeah, you can use easy stroke for the stamping. You can use it for, design work and things, but they're not designed for like background coverage. They're more, details and shading and stroke work and things that they're really designed for. The camera is pulsing again when I put that box out there, so I'm going to just take it away here for a second. I see Catherine asking, are those single use? I think she's talking about the texture. Is it the texture tool you're asking about, Catherine?
Oh, probably.
So no, that texture tool will last for years. The one that I had for about 15 years. It is a very hard plastic. Eventually that texture on there will probably wear down, but even the one that I had, that texture hadn't worn down after years and years of use. So, but no, why am I saying that? No, you want to throw these out after you use them. You want to throw those out. So buy the case of 144 and it'll last you 144 projects. No, they'll last you a long, long time.
Well, Jan Klein is telling people that she found 5 today. She's got Fonda covered.
I know people have been searching for those, and I had gotten my hands on a few of them from a shop that went out of business, and people were almost killing each other to get those. So, all right, so mystery box. Here's the twist tonight. And I'll flip this up here for a second. So the twist tonight with the mystery box is I've got 2 mystery boxes. The person who wins gets to pick which one they want, and you'll understand once I open them what the differences are. They're very similar. They've got some different products in them. So whoever's name I draw, I'm going to announce your name, and then you need to just let us know that you're here. Once I open the box, let us know which box you prefer. And if for some reason you don't like either one of them, we'll draw another name out. After the last live that I did a couple weeks ago, somebody, Rita, and I don't know if Rita's in here tonight, mentioned, she's like, I would love to buy the mystery box because I like the stuff that's in there. Would you just sell the mystery boxes as a kit? And so tonight it actually kind of works out really well to put together a kit for the mystery box, and then they will be available for other people, but it won't be the same price. Mystery box person that gets their name drawn, it's $50, includes shipping on it. I'm gonna grab my piece of paper here. I wrote down the kits are on sale from $69 to $99, depending which one you get. So it's still a really good deal because they're normally about $80 to $130 for these kits. So I'm gonna flip the camera down as we draw a name out of here. Lori Stinnett, Stinnett. If you're in here, Lori, let us know. Your name was drawn, and I will start to open the mystery boxes, and we'll watch for Lori. Oh yeah, there's Rita. Yeah, Rita, you're the one who gave me the idea. Thank you for that idea. So the first mystery box, I told you it probably would have everything to do with what we're doing tonight. This first mystery box has the lathe, and it has a full set of all of the designer liner colors, and it also has the smaller ornament and the larger ornament with the caps in that assortment. So that's kit number 1, has the designer liner. Kit number 2 is basically the same thing.
Lori's here.
All right, Lori's here.
Says woohoo.
The second kit comes with the lathe, the ornaments, 12 colors of stroke and coat, and then it has a dozen of the plastic caps that can replace the tops on there, and it has a dozen of the metal tips in there. So this kit normally retails for $129.95, and Lori, you could get this one for $50. Anybody else that wants this kit, this is available on the website for $99. The one that has the designer liner, that normally retails for $109.99, and you can get those for $89. Or we have a kit that has the lathe, and it has, there's no color, because some of you already have color and you don't need it, but it has these 6 of the fillable bottles with the caps and the pins inside there come in that kit, and that one retails for $79.95, and that one is on special for $69 for the kit. And all of those include free shipping in the US 48 on there. So when you go into the live event special section, I believe it's item number 1, we kind of number them so that they come up toward the top. There's a drop-down menu that you can select which kit. Now, Lori, you just need to decide which one of these you want, if you want the stroke and coat kit or if you want the designer liner kit. And this isn't like let's make a deal that you're going to lose out on this. I'm not going to ask you to pick curtain 1 or 2 or 3 or anything. Just need to let us know. And if you want to think about it and let me know tomorrow, that's fine too. Just let me know that you want one of these kits, which I'm assuming based on your initial reaction you do.
How long is the sale going on for?
So the sale is good for 2 weeks until the next live. Usually around lunchtime on the day of the live, I go in and change out the live event special. So you'll have 2 weeks to get in on any of the specials that are posted there tonight. And it's learnfiredarts.com, again, is the website. And you'll find all kinds, and there's other stuff in there too. There's the Colors for Earth concentrate kits. There's a whole bunch of stroke and coat kits. We've got all of the open stock now for stroke and coat 2-ounce bottles and pints in stock. Those will be getting added to the website soon. We've got a lot of stuff to add to the website, but we've still been busy packing orders. And I do have good news with that too. By next week, or by the end of this weekend, I should say, pretty much every order, with the exception of some of the spheres, the large sphere shape, and a few of those. We're still working on some of those back orders. And we've had a couple colors of Mako where there's raw material problems. We got an order in the other day, and the freight company stacked our skids and destroyed a lot of stuff that was on those skids. They crushed stuff, and some of it was slip. There was about 100 gallons of slip that had gushed out all over other product. So that was a huge mess. And extruders, we still have some people waiting for the Shimpo extruders, and those are still stuck out in the ocean in Los Angeles. They're now saying first week of July they should be here. They've been sitting for a month probably out there just waiting to get into the port. So pretty much everything else, though, should be caught up by this weekend, including orders that have come in this week. So we're in pretty good shape. And so did Lori respond yet?
She said it's a hard decision, but she'll take the stroke and coat kit.
All right, I'm throwing your name in the stroke and coat one then. And so Lori, you can go in, and if you go into the live event specials, there is item number 1 is pay by dollar amount. Just go in and put in quantity of 50 and just follow the steps in there, entering your information. And once you've paid for that, we will get that shipped out to you. Congratulations on that. And so if there aren't other questions, I'm going to wrap it up tonight. And I appreciate you guys coming. We will be doing lives yet every other Wednesday. We are going to be switching the time to be a little bit earlier. I know for some of you on the West Coast that might be a little bit challenging, but these are recorded, so you'll be able to watch them after the live is done. So we'll be announcing the new starting time coming soon. So thanks for joining us tonight, and take care.